You know what's strange? Gym injuries rarely show up in the first few weeks. Early on, everything feels smooth. You're motivated, showing up consistently, adding weight, feeling like the routine is finally clicking. I remember that phase well. Every workout feels like progress. Then, out of nowhere, something small starts acting up. Maybe your knee feels a little off during squats. Your shoulder makes that faint clicking sound when you press overhead. Or your elbow suddenly complains every time you do pushdowns. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make you pause and think, wait, what did I even do? The odd part is that injuries at the gym usually aren't tied to one big mistake. They tend to build quietly, little habits repeated over and over. Skipping the warm-up because you're short on time. Speeding through reps when the weight gets heavy. Adding plates a bit faster than your body can really adapt to. Ignoring those tiny warning signals because they seem harmless. In the moment, none of it feels serious. Most people brush it off. But inside the joint, something else might be unfolding. Joints are remarkably durable, yet they depend heavily on preparation. Cartilage, tendons, and ligaments respond best when movement gradually increases blood flow and pressure. When that process is skipped, the situation is a bit like revving a cold engine the second you start the car. Sure, it might run fine at first, but after a while, something begins to wear down. What's interesting, maybe even a little frustrating, is how many people assume joint protection requires complicated rehab routines or giving up intense training altogether. From what I've seen, that's usually not the case. More often, the difference between someone who trains comfortably for 20 years and someone who constantly deals with nagging aches comes down to a handful of small habits. Nothing dramatic, 5 minutes here, maybe 10 minutes there. Yet those tiny adjustments can change how your joints absorb stress over time. Simple things, really. How you warm up before touching a bar. How quickly you increase weight from week to week. What you do between training sessions. And, oddly enough, most of these habits aren't about pushing harder. If anything, they're about paying a little more attention. Because when your joints are prepared, supported, and given enough time to recover, they don't just tolerate heavy training. They tend to handle it surprisingly well. Weights feel steadier, movements feel smoother, and those strange aches that used to pop up halfway through a workout, they start fading into the background. So it might be worth looking at a few of these small habits, the ones that quietly protect your knees, shoulders, hips, and spine week after week in the gym. A couple of them are pretty obvious. A few others people almost never think about. And interestingly enough, the first one actually begins before you even pick up a weight. If you look closely, many gym injuries seem to trace back to something surprisingly small that happens right at the start of the workout. You walk in, drop your bag, maybe swing your arms a couple of times, or maybe you skip even that. 5 minutes later, you're already sliding plates onto the bar. Your muscles might feel ready. Your joints, though, are probably still catching up. From what I understand, joints depend a lot on something called synovial fluid. It's basically the body's built-in lubricant. When you begin moving around, walking, rotating your hips, swinging your arms, circulation picks up, and that fluid starts coating the cartilage inside the joint. The catch is that it takes a few minutes. Jump straight into heavy sets while everything is still cold, and those joint surfaces are suddenly grinding under load without much lubrication. Nothing dramatic happens immediately, but small irritations may start stacking up. That's why a quick dynamic warm-up seems almost too simple, yet it makes a real difference. 5 to 10 minutes is usually enough. Nothing fancy. Maybe a few minutes on a bike, a brisk walk on the treadmill, then some leg swings, hip circles, arm rotations, torso twists. You're not trying to stretch deeply at this stage. You're basically telling your joints, hey, we're about to work. Once that happens, those first working sets often feel noticeably smoother. Another thing worth mentioning is what happens during the lift itself. A lot of joint stress doesn't actually come from the weight alone. It often comes from how the weight moves. You've probably seen it in the gym. Knees caving inward during squats, elbows flaring out during presses, a rounded lower back during deadlifts. The rep still goes up, so it doesn't look like a disaster, but joints are built to handle force along certain paths. When alignment drifts, that force starts landing on ligaments and smaller stabilizing tissues that weren't really meant to carry it. That's where irritation quietly begins. Keeping form under control helps a lot here. Sometimes that just means filming a set or glancing at a mirror. Slowing reps slightly can also help. The body seems to organize itself better when movements aren't rushed. Ego lifting, on the other hand, tends to pull things out of position. Progression plays a role too. Everyone enjoys adding weight. It's the rewarding part of training. But muscles usually adapt faster than tendons and ligaments. Your quads might feel ready for another jump and load, while the connective tissue around the knee is still adapting. That's probably why many experienced lifters stick to the rough 10% guideline, nudging weight or volume up gradually instead of making big leaps. It may sound cautious, but it gives joints time to reinforce the structures around them. Strong quads stabilize the knee, glutes support the hips, and a steady core helps protect the spine. A small shift that also seems helpful is occasionally choosing lower impact cardio. Instead of pounding pavement every week, cycling, swimming, or even the elliptical can keep conditioning high without the repetitive joint impact. Then there's the part most people skip, the cool down. After lifting, muscles stay shortened and tight for a while. If you leave immediately, that tension can tug on the joints they attach to. Spending 5 or 10 minutes stretching or foam rolling, loosening hips, shoulders, quads, hamstrings, seems to give everything a bit more space. And over time, that extra mobility can make the next workout feel noticeably easier. Still, one habit probably matters even more than any warm-up or stretch. And interestingly, it has very little to do with the gym itself. The habit that probably protects your joints the most doesn't actually happen during the workout. It happens afterward, during recovery. A lot of people assume injuries come from one bad rep. Sometimes they do. But more often, if you look back, it seems to be fatigue piling up quietly over time. One hard session after another, with very little space in between. Your body usually gives small hints when it needs a break. Maybe a knee feels tight halfway through squats, a shoulder that's a bit stiff when you reach overhead, or that dull ache that shows up midway through a workout and never quite disappears. Most lifters ignore it. I've done it too. Part of the culture around training almost encourages pushing through everything. Soreness feels normal. Grinding through sets feels productive. But joints don't really repair themselves under constant load. They tend to recover during the downtime, when you're not training. So one useful skill, oddly enough, is learning to tell the difference between muscle fatigue and joint discomfort. Muscle burn is usually broad and fades quickly. Joint pain tends to feel sharper and more specific, like it's coming from a single point. When that signal shows up, backing off for a bit might actually be the smarter move. Taking a day or two off each week gives connective tissues time to rebuild. Some lifters also schedule a lighter deload week every month or so, which seems to help keep long-term stress from creeping up unnoticed. Sleep matters more than people sometimes realize too. During deeper sleep, the body ramps up tissue repair. 7 or 8 hours isn't just about feeling less tired the next day. It's when tendons, ligaments, and cartilage seem to do a lot of their maintenance work. Hydration plays a role as well. Cartilage is largely water, so being slightly dehydrated may reduce its ability to absorb impact. It's not dramatic, but staying hydrated probably helps joints move a little more smoothly. Food can influence things too. Meals that include omega-3 fats, like salmon, walnuts, or flaxseed, plus vegetables and solid protein sources appear to support recovery and keep inflammation from getting out of hand. One other piece people overlook is posture outside the gym. Sitting for hours with rounded shoulders can tighten the chest and weaken the upper back. Eventually, That shows up during presses or rows. Knees drift inward, shoulders roll forward, and suddenly, joints are working from awkward angles before the workout even starts. Standing up occasionally, lifting objects properly, or doing a short mobility session, maybe yoga or a quick stretch flow 2 or 3 times a week, can gradually correct some of that. When these small habits start stacking together, training often feels different. Warm-ups feel easier. Movements look cleaner. The random aches that used to appear halfway through workouts slowly fade. Not because you stopped pushing yourself. More likely because your body is finally getting the preparation and recovery it needs. In the end, protecting your joints isn't about being overly cautious. It's mostly about consistency, warming up properly, progressing gradually, sleeping well, and giving your body time to reset. Small adjustments, repeated for months and years. And those tiny choices might be what allows you to keep lifting, not just next month, but 10 years from now.